This radiation topic, even just day before yesterday, I was teaching to my kids, what kind of radiation effects are there coming from the mobile. And I was trying to convince them to not to use that mobile up to 12 years because I have, mashallah, three sons and one daughter. So uh, the elder son is 10 years old, then 7 years. Abdul Hadi is 10 years and Heather is 7 years. And the third son I got, mashallah, blessed by Allah, just 1 month before. And and my daughter is like 5 years old. So I was teaching them and convincing them. All three, first of all. The fourth one, of course, still need to be able to understand me, mashallah. And to be very honest, that training is important. It's not like only the public trainings. Even the training must be done of our family members also. And one of the topic I decided the radiation, how that radiation is terribly affecting the health of our kids, the future generation actually. And one of the biggest addiction they all are getting nowadays, because of the games, because of so many other things, but even because of their learning, that is also mandatory to keep them connected with the technology. So through that, they can learn more things, more faster. But with, of course, some set of rules and exposure time limits actually, rather than using all the time. And you will also be noticing even in our Saudi Arabia, a lot of kids, they are fully addicted. We call it screen addiction. And their brain, until they see mobile for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, they will not even listen to you, and their concentration, the way they behave, their psychologically terrible impacts, you will also be noticing here. Their focus powers would also be demolishing because you are saying something, but their focus is only mobile. They don't even bother what you are talking about, not intentionally. Because of that screen addiction, because of that radiations, the properties of their mindset or kind of the blood cells or the white blood cells is all disturbed actually. That is why they are terribly affected. Just imagine in hospitals, in the X-ray rooms, why they keep us away? Because of terrible radiations. Why we wear these glasses? To avoid, to keep our eyes safe from several radiations. Why we keep our welders and why we provide them several PPs and screens, to make sure time, distance, and shielding. The best strategies to deal with radiation as a hazard. But the problem with this hazard, as per my research also, it have both way, like temporary effects and long term. And long term means could be the skin cancer. The radiations we are getting from the sunbeams even can create the skin burns and skin cancers, because of those radiations. And several radioactive materials we have, or the norms, we call it naturally occurring radioactive materials. Like you go and observe, especially at night time at the oil rig sites, if you are a kind of a person going as a trainer or as an auditor and staying there maybe for 2 nights or 3 nights just to complete your project, at night just observe some of the terrible at the top of your blanket, while you are sleeping. Because wherever you have some sort of frictions or energies or playing with the nature or having some rigging or kind of activities for oil and gas to explore, of course, several radiations you will get all around. That is why several watches are invented, how to keep yourself safe from those radiations. No doubt we can't keep ourselves safe 100%, but unavoidable, in other words. Sometimes I say we are occupied with radiations. Like take an example of our employees' residential compounds. And employees, one room, if 4 employees are living all together, all 4 have mobiles, all 4 have chargers. Even the extensions are overloaded. The radiations are coming from all 4 mobiles. We have Wi-Fi, it's another radiation. And we have laptops sometimes also to watch movies and songs and different things. And then early morning, it is really hard to wake up because of that terrible effects of radiations. So both way, physically, emotionally, on the other way around, health perspective point of view is all having terrible effects because of those radiations actually. You know, in Saudi Aramco, you will see one of the gentlemen, we call it radiation protection officer, RPO, you know. And a lot of GIs are relevant to that radiography permit and, you know, to guide uh, the the contractors even to keep continue their activity by following those GIs. But getting approval as a RPO, radiation protection officer, even from Aramco, is not an easy job. It's kind of a scientist, you know, you are going to get approved from Saudi Aramco. It's not easy to get approved as a radiation protection officer because in depth he has to understand how to tackle that monster as a hazard, you know, and reduce the impact. 100% elimination of that risk, almost, you know, that means you need to stop your activities then. But if your company operations are there and you just can find out the way how to reduce that terrible effects of radiation. But on the other side, make sure you have the right set of people on board and they understand how to tackle what kind of protections are required. And sometimes, you know, we enjoy our vacations. We lay off in front of the sea and the sunbeams and have no understanding how terribly that sunbeams can affect after a certain time period, you know, to our body cells, to our skin, and overall terrible effect to our brain even. So let's discuss how NEBOSH is guiding us little bit in depth about radiation. There are 2 types of radiations, non-ionizing or ionizing. Non-ionizing does not cause ionization in the material that observe it. It's kind of a visible light. Ionizing does cause ionization in the material that observe it. Could be X-ray. Okay, so 2 types of radiations and their health effects. Now, what are the health effects? So we have to understand for each category of radiation how it is terribly affecting to our health or what would be the effects actually. So let's start with UV, the ultraviolet rays are kind of radiations. High frequency is there, electromagnetic radiation light emitted by white hot materials such as the arc produced during arc welding. And whenever you do risk assessment of arc welding, you truly have to evaluate the health effects of UV. Visible light, electromagnetic radiation, the UV and IR, infrared frequencies and visible to the human eye. Infrared IR is a low frequency electromagnetic radiation light emitted by red hot materials such as molten metal is an example of infrared, you know, IR electromagnetic radiation with red hot materials. Example is molten metal being poured into the castings. Microwaves, everyone mostly we have in our kitchen, so lower frequency electromagnetic radiations emitted by microwave generator. Now, radio waves, low frequency electromagnetic radiations emitted by an antenna, you know. So these are some of the uh, type of radiations. But now let's talk about how it would be affecting to our health, you know. because we understood the different types and the sources also we can discuss again. And what would be the health effects? Let's take an example of UV. The sources are sunlight and arc welding. And what would be the effects? The skin burns, arc eye, the skin cancer even. And mostly we can see in summer season. That is why in Arab countries, a clear-cut policy, no more working starting from 12 to 3 o'clock, like 3 p.m. up to 3 p.m. No work, because especially under direct sunlight. Why we have heat stress plan? Because we don't want to see such kind of terrible health effects to our employees actually to face in. Visible light, take an example of the source like lasers, the temporary blindness. Infrared IR, red hot steel, glass manufacturers, redness and skin burns, retinal burns, even cataracts could also be another health effect. Microwaves, we use it usually, for food preparation, telecommunications. It increase our internal heating and also organ damage. Radio waves like radio, TV, and radar, and look at the health effects, could be internal heating or organ damage. So the most dangerous is the UV, even though we are getting from the sunlight and arc welding. And also the several materials and type of. Now we have to see and go back and see all our company operations and find out, is there any process where we are using sort of machines which are creating radiations, and how we're going to keep our employees safe. Now for you, just a group exercise before we go for lunch and prayer break. You are going on holiday to a hot country with long hours of sunshine. Discuss how you will protect yourself from sunburn from the UV light. Because ultimately protection is everything. We can't eliminate the risk from everywhere. But of course, we can have some protection layers, to protect ourselves, especially from UV light. What would be your kind of protection methods, from UV light while you are going for a holiday to a hot country? Over to you, please. As per your understanding. Yes, please. Discuss how you will protect yourself from sunburn from the UV light. Anyone, please. How you will protect yourself from sunburn from the UV light. Are you going to create any shady area there, or you're going to use any kind of creams available in the market, or what would be your best method? Or you will work on the duration, like not to lay down more than several hours, What would be your best strategy, protection strategy against sunburn from the UV light? Yes, guys. Any one of you, please. Mr. Fawaz, Mr. Khalid. Any other one, please?
If you go to have you need to have umbrella or something shade, or there is many options. Something like this.
Okay, so these are some of the controlling exposure to non-ionizing radiations, especially from UV light. What is the best ways to cover exposed skin and protect your eyes? And visible light lasers, low class, avoiding shining in eyes, and high class eye protection and shielding required non-reflective surfaces. So according to the type of radiation, you need to find out your protection methods or to follow them actually. Like for UV, the best thing is to cover exposed skin and protect your eyes. And if it is visible light and lasers, low class avoid shining in eyes, and high class eye protection like shielding non-reflective surfaces. Infrared is covered exposed skin and protect eyes. Microwave safe distance is much better. Isolate and lock off. Radio wave safe distance and isolate and lock off. So according to the type of radiation, you need to follow some protection methods. Now the types of ionizing radiations, these are more dangerous comparing to the non-ionizing, but because they have alpha particles, smoke detectors and science labs. Beta particles, they have science labs and thickness gauges. X-rays, medical radiography, and baggage security scanners. Gamma rays, industrial radiography for non-destructive testing like NDT of metal and welds. And neutrons, nuclear power stations. So all are categories of ionizing radiations. Now, what would be the health effects? So two categories of health effects, acute and chronic. And what does that mean of acute health effects? It would create a kind of a sickness and diarrhea or hair loss, anemia like red blood cells could be damaged. It could also reduce immune system like white blood cell damage. And you know this against COVID-19, all the people having strong immunity system, they survived actually. And they, because of their immunity level, even though this vaccination is still mandatory for everyone, because that would help us to create kind of a protection layer or and improve our immunity system to fight with this coronavirus actually. So same way, if we truly want to have some reduction in health effects, our immunity system must be strong enough. Chronic health effects could be cancer, genetic mutations, and birth defects. Just because of these types of ionizing radiations, cancer, genetic mutation, and birth defects could also be there. So acute health effects and chronic health effects of ionizing radiations we have discussed so far. What is the best strategy or kind of control, against these ionizing radiations? So bear in mind and remember the TDS, we call it time distance shielding, not technical data sheet, time, distance, and shielding. What is the best way? Either you reduce your exposure time, minimize it, or have a dose proportional to time. Don't spend too much time under this ionizing radiation environment. Otherwise, go and have some distance, like alpha and beta can travel long distances through air. So other forms obey the inverse square law. So double the distance is equal to quarter the dose. Double the distance is equal to quarter the dose. So distance would also be very much helpful. Otherwise, the shielding, use materials such as lead. So time, distance, and shielding are the best control to reduce the health effects. Even 100% still would be a question mark, but at least we can reduce and bring at acceptable level, tolerable, or as low as reasonably practicable through those methods to avoid from ionizing radiations. And these are the categories like alpha particles, beta particles, X-rays, gamma rays, and neutrons. The rest of the things, inshallah, we'll start after the break with group exercise, and we'll see how a pregnant woman can be saved through time, distance, and shielding. That we'll discuss, inshallah, after the break. So far, thank you very much for your great patience, your focus, your participation, kind of contribution to make this training more interactive. Thank you very much for all those energies you have, Masha. So I'll catch you back at 1 o'clock. So before the lunch break, we were right in the middle of discussion. What are the types of ionizing and non-ionizing kind of radiations and how it could affect? We even discussed the acute and chronic effects of ionizing radiations and what are the best controls, And most importantly, for ionizing radiations, we discuss time, distance, and shielding as a best control measure for several kind of ionizing radiations. So now we have a kind of a group exercise. A pregnant woman is in need of an X-ray for a suspected broken bone. Discuss the control measures in the X-ray department of a hospital by using time, distance, and shielding to structure your answer. Any one of you voluntarily would like to comment on it? Otherwise, we'll move on how NEBOSH is guiding, because it's a game of time, to reduce the time, exposure time, and also apply some distance methodologies and have some better shielding. So I believe this basic means of controlling exposure ionizing radiations as per the radiation regulations 2017. There are dose limits on exposure, like for general public, it should be below 1 millisievert per year, and for workers below 20 millisievert per year. That is the kind of permissible limits or exposure limits as per ionizing radiations regulation 2017. What is 1 millisievert? It is the SI system. A millisievert is defined as the average cumulative background radiation dose to an individual for 1 year, exclusive of radon in the United States. 1 millisievert is the dose produced by exposure to 1 milligray of radiation. So that means the regulation required a risk assessment to be carried out, and this should be done by a competent person. We required a radiation protection advisor. I gave an example of Saudi Aramco. They have radiation protection officers available, especially whenever there is a kind of activity or process for radiography permit is mandatory for those activities, and radiation protection supervisors may also be need to be appointed, as per ionizing radiation regulations 2017. Now, the radon gas is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. Alpha particle radiation, ionizing radiation is there. It also have health effects outside body, not particularly hazardous, but inside body by inhalation, increased of lung cancer. So the serious health effects are there of radon gas. Where naturally occurring levels are high, outside low concern, inside poorly ventilated workplaces, could be like basements or or even some kind of confined spaces, or the places which is not designed for human occupancy. In other words, the control of risk, the action level, we surely require a survey to undertake, appoint a radiation protection supervisor, introduce engineering controls, maybe the positive pressure air fans, or you can rely on radon sumps and extraction system. So ventilation is critically important to avoid from this radon gas. Now, what are the basic radiation protection strategies? Basic radiation strategies that apply in all cases. What we truly have to do, again, hierarchy of control, starting from elimination. Eliminate exposure so far as it's reasonably practicable. Otherwise, reduce exposure to the lowest level reasonably practicable. Do not exceed the relevant radiation dose limits and risk assessed by the competent person. And surely we need to deliver some training and information to our employees, and health surveillance is also important for ensuring the better health of our or the safety of our employees from this radiation. What is the role of monitoring and health surveillance? Of course, there are types of examination include, like we can have some skin checks, respiratory checks, and exposure records, and also sickness records. That would help us to get some insights about the gentleman, especially to our employees working in radiative kind of environment. So that was all about the radiation. So we started from the noise, then we discussed the vibration, and we ended up with another hazard we called radiation, and different types of radiations we discussed all together.